if someone doesn't want something done to their body, they can decline that.
Welcome to the Birth Lounge Podcast, an empowering space for expecting and new parents to hear candid conversations with experts, support your mental health, and learn the tips and tricks that thousands of parents have used to craft their ideal birth. We will answer all of your questions, the scary ones and the weird ones, to help calm your fears and feel confident going into your birth. I'm going to help you redefine what birth and motherhood looks like and how to embrace your journey. I've intentionally crafted a list of experts to help you navigate pregnancy, explore your birth options, and plan for postpartum so that it can be a time of soaking in your tiny human. We're going to go there on all the hard topics so that you can dive deep into finding your confidence and freeing yourself from fears around birth. With over 10 years of experience in family education and a master's degree in human development and family studies, I created this podcast as a way to share the resources parents need to make educated and informed decisions about their care in pregnancy and childbirth. This is a birth community driven by evidence-based information and research in hopes to help you explore your options, understand your rights, and know what choices you have along the way when it comes to birth and beyond. I'm your host, Hee Hee. Now let's get to the good stuff. Hello, have you heard about my completely free class that teaches you 6 evidence-based ways to avoid a C-section and reduce your tearing in labor by up to 50%? And remember, I mentioned it was completely free. This class is going to teach you how to advocate for your preferences in the birth room so that you can have a birth that's filled with joy and not birth trauma. Advocating for yourself starts with being empowered with the right information so that you can ask the right questions and confidently make decisions during labor based on what feels good to you and your baby. But here's the thing. The U.S. has one of the highest C-section rates in the world, and it is ever climbing year after year. And it's not because the system is broken, albeit it is, but it's really because women don't have the tools to navigate that broken system. We may not be able to change the system before you have your baby, but what we can do is change how you operate within that system. Change the conversations that you're having with your providers. Change the places that you are getting your information to help you have informed conversation with your doctor before you have your baby. I want to teach you how to do that. We know the reasons that our C-section rates are climbing. We know the reasons that inductions happen so often, and we know the reasons that babies end up in the NICU. I want to help you avoid all of that so that you can have a birth that you love. You can find my free class at thebirthlounge.com/C-section so that you can learn 6 evidence-based ways to avoid a C-section and reduce your tearing in labor. Again, that is thebirthlounge.com/C-section. See you there. Bye. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Birth Lounge Podcast. All right, you guys, you know that informed choice, freedom of choice, you being able to make decisions for yourself without having to experience any bullying or coercion or manipulation, belittling, nothing, disrespect. I want you to have a birth experience that empowers you and lights you up, and you feel confident and you feel informed not only about the things that are offered to you, but about all of your options. You feel informed about the different choices that you know may come your way. You feel informed about how to navigate conversations. What actual words can you use to advocate for yourself and your goals? I care so deeply about you being able to truly have a positive hospital birth. And I know that so much of that starts with communication and really being able to advocate for yourself. One of the hardest things about advocating for yourself is overcoming that idea that so many of us have of like, oh, I just want to be like a good patient. I was raised to like be a good girl. I was raised to really not ask questions. Like, don't cause waves, just kind of go with the flow and be chill and grin and bear it, bite your tongue. Don't be disruptive. Well, I'm not necessarily encouraging you to be disruptive, but what I will say is part of being a good patient is being an active patient. You want to be an active participant in your healthcare because not only will it save you and your provider some trauma, but it will also help you have a better outcome. It will help you have a more positive birth. It will help you have better satisfaction, feel better and happier and more satisfied with your birth experience. If that's not worth it, I do not know what is. So a few months ago, I was scrolling on Instagram as one does, and I came across a profile that had a post that caught my eye. And then when I clicked on it, I was like, no way. This person is like a soul sister of mine. I feel like we are cut from the same cloth. We believe very similar things. We have very similar approaches and ideas and thoughts. She was a naturally minded, certified ICU nurse. She had been a nurse for over 12 years. She's a board certified integrative nurse coach. She has children of her own, and she's a doula. Obviously, we have some differences there right now, but I was like, oh my goodness, we are so similar in so many ways. Who is this person? I'm so excited to have on Kayla Grove today. Kayla's going to share her personal experience and how that shaped her whole path into advocacy work, how that really pushed her to not only advocate for herself, but the people in her life as well. She endured a tragic loss of her best friend due to negligence, medical negligence, actually. And this also happened right before she had her first baby. This experience catapulted her into advocacy work. As if things weren't bad enough for her already, she had a difficult birth, followed by a lot of postpartum anxiety and OCD. And in 2022, she actually experienced a missed miscarriage that led her deeper down a path of education and training. And then she did have her rainbow baby in 2023. She opened up her coaching business not long after that, and then her doula business in 2024. As one does after a traumatic birth, she learned everything that she could and did go on to have a positive second birth experience. And her postpartum was much better too, one that she even describes as healing. In this episode, Kayla's going to share how she found her voice to go against the grain, if you will, to make empowered choices for herself through various points in her life and how that has shaped her motherhood journey, as well as how she practices as a doula and a nurse. It's also such a good reminder that it's okay to make different decisions in the people around you as long as you feel informed about the risk and the benefits, your options, the choices you have, alternatives that are available. Then you have that right. I'm so stoked to be chatting with Kayla today, and I'm excited to have you here to listen in. Without further ado, Kayla, welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone.
I'm so excited to have you here. So obviously, as I said, we met on Instagram, and the first thing that I saw of your profile spoke directly to my heart. You have long brown hair, you have brown eyes. I was like, wait. Is this human my sister? Are we related? Do I have a sister that I'm not aware about? Then I clicked into your profile. I saw all of your other stuff and I was like, wait, does my family have a deep, dark secret and I have a human that is related to me and I don't know about it? We have so many things that we agree on. And so I reached out to you, very unlike myself, and offered you to come on to the podcast without ever having a previous conversation with you. And that is just really not so much my style, but I felt so connected to the things that you were saying because I think it is very important that medical professionals are standing up for informed consent and they're standing up for people truly being able to have autonomy and make decisions for themselves, regardless of what their medical team thinks. And you do that so beautifully. So today, I hope this episode, I hope the takeaways for our listeners, I hope it is that it's okay for you to make different decisions than the people around you. And it's not reckless and you're not negligent. And if you are feeling called to make a certain decision, I truly do believe that there is something to lean into there. I do believe that is something for you to dig deeper in and just explore. It doesn't mean you have to make that decision, but I do believe that you don't get those nudges deep down in your soul, the things that make you want to move and put action behind what you're feeling. I don't think you get get those on a whim. I think they're very intentional. So, can you share with us your thoughts around patient autonomy and being able to make decisions for yourself, and maybe just what do you do as a mom? Because you talk about this a lot on your page, but also as an RN, how do you respect that when you are, trying to suggest something clinically or guide your patients into making a decision that you know is the right decision, but they are having a hard time coming to that decision themselves?
Yeah, so how I make decisions usually is I look at the evidence. I'm a nurse. I know how to find the evidence. I look online. I look for scholarly articles, Cochrane reviews. I look at that. But then I think, okay, the evidence is there. I see that. But something inside of me, inside of my stomach is saying, but that's not right for you.
Mm.
And I had a really hard time with that when I started making these alternative decisions for myself that are controversial to others out there. And I lead in, so I have a process.
Tell us all the good details.
Yeah. The process is when I'm making a very difficult decision, I meditate and I journal. So what I do is I look at the decision that I'm supposed to make. And then I look at the decision that my heart or my stomach, I listen to my stomach, I get nauseous and I get this knot in my stomach. I'm like, ooh, that's my intuition. That's telling me something. And so then I go walk myself through this meditation and I visualize myself making the decision that I'm told I need to make and the alternative decision that my gut is telling me. And I visualize this process. And then at the end of it, whichever one makes me feel calm is the decision I make no matter what. And that's usually how I make a lot of my decisions. And I pretty much will say the evidence is there, but I don't care. That's how I've gotten to where I am. So I do a lot of my work following my intuition.
Okay, and as a nurse, when you're stepping people through decisions and you're like, okay, but this is the right decision. Let's just take antibiotics, for example. You know, this person needs them. It's very clear they need them, and they're making the decision not to take that. As a nurse, how do you respond to that?
That's a good question. So when I'm working in the hospital, and again, I'm an ICU nurse, I don't work in OB or anything like that. If a patient doesn't want to do something that their doctor is recommending, I say, okay, tell me a little bit more about that. What are you fearing? What is this, a fear? Or is there, you have to dig a little bit deeper to understand why this person is responding the way they are. And then maybe I can clarify, are you fearful of this antibiotic? What is it? Instead of just, okay, you don't want it, and you tell the doctor. I don't do that. You say, what is it? Tell me about it. Talk to me. And especially in pregnancy and postpartum and birth, that's what your provider needs to be doing with you. Why are you fearing this? Why are you saying no? And you get a better understanding of where they're coming from.
And then what do you do with that information? Providers out there that are listening and they're like, okay, Kayla, and then they tell me that they're scared of it and they don't want to take it. Then what do you do with that information? You're obviously educating them on the benefits, but if you can't come to a place of agreement and you just absolutely cannot get this person to agree to antibiotics, how are you responding?
Me personally, I don't care. I don't get mad. I don't get defensive. That's fine. It's very easy for me to go into the MAR and say, declined.
I love that so much. That's a mic drop right there, right? Is that your job is not to necessarily convince someone to do something.
Absolutely not.
If you know that it is beneficial for them, and even I guess I was going to say your opinion is, but it's not always opinion based. Sometimes it's your opinion that this is the best, but sometimes the evidence is actually very clear that this is the best choice and that there is sometimes a right and a less right, I won't say wrong, but less right choice, right? And but it's so easy for you to go in there and say this patient had the education. We gave the clinical suggestions. We made sure that they understood what the risks were if they declined, and they still said they didn't want it. That is
Okay.
your job.
Yes.
Your job is not to try and then berate them or bully them or convince them or coerce them or manipulate them or use any sort of tactics. If you find yourself leaning towards, I need to do X, Y, and Z so that they'll take them, that you've overstepped what your boundaries are as a medical professional because that is not it.
I just got a thought. So there are two Kaylas. There was the Kayla that would get aggravated. Like, why does
Mm.
this person not want to take this medication? Or why are they don't want to listen? They don't want to listen. They don't want to be here. I used to think that way. And through my experiences in life, I started to realize that it's not about me. Why does this bother me so much? So it really started to make me look into me. Look
Mhm.
at like teary-eyed feeling.
Yeah, me too. I'm like, oh my God, she gets it. She like really gets it. But also just recognizing your growth there as a medical professional. Old Kayla, who taught her that? Where'd she pick that up? Where did that come from?
It came from school. It came from the medical mindset, the hierarchy. You are authority. I tell you what to do and you listen, kind of thing. No one directly told me that. It is,
An unspoken rule.
I think that's the word. Yes. And you just learn that by observing. This isn't intentional. This isn't saying medical professionals are intentionally being this way. It's something you have to awaken inside of you. You have to have these life experiences to be able to relate to that person in the bed. And that's what happened to me through my life, through learning, through being curious, through asking questions.
I think it's easy for people like you and I because we can relate to the medical side of things, right? I'm not a medical professional. My husband is in medicine, he's in healthcare, and he's an EMT. I've been a doula for 10 years. I understand the hospital, I understand the problems. I understand the hardships. I understand the complaints of the staff. I understand the complaints of the administration. I've seen all of it. I've seen a lot of it. I also have been that person who's declining stuff. So I know what it's like to be berated or to have coercive care be given to me. I
Mhm.
know what it's like from a doula's perspective to watch women be manipulated by their
Mhm.
doctors and by the system. I have watched the system, literally, the things put in place. They are working as they are supposed to be working. This is no mistake. This is by design. Take advantage of humans, right? And so I think it's really easy for people like you and I who do have that lens on both sides to find that compassion to say, you know what, I hear you. It does not
Mhm.
have to be the decision that I would make or what I would choose for myself, but I definitely hear you and I'm going to respect you. And I think people who are a little bit less willing to have that flexibility or just can't find it within themselves to find that compassion, I do agree with you. They have not lived the experiences that they need to yet. It
Yes.
tells me that you still have living and learning to do. Not to say that you and I have lived and learned everything, but we've done the living and the learning to be able to put ourselves in shoes of people that we disagree with.
I think having the experience of having two versions of myself has just made me a better mom, has made me a better nurse and a better friend. I'm really glad for that experience. And I look back on that Kayla and I just want to give her a hug.
Tell me more about that.
I just my rigid thinking. I could not see other people's perspective. It was just very me centered. And I did a lot of disservice to other patients. My God, my patients still, I always gave great care, but the care that I give now to my patients, every day I'm
It's
hugging,
life changing. Yeah.
every day I'm hugging people. And I'm always getting, I am so thankful that you're my nurse today. And I just had an experience over the weekend. Sorry, I'm so emotional.
And my little empath heart could not take this. I am just like, I'm a ball of tears.
Oh my gosh.
But I
Uh,
love to see how much it's radiating out of you that you love your job. You literally love the humans that you take care of. And I think that's been lost in a lot of medicine. And I think you can see it, you can feel it as a patient.
Yes, and I try not to be. I've had so many experiences. You may have known I lost my best friend to medical negligence.
Oh my gosh.
And it sparked this fierce anger inside of me towards the medical community that I work in. And it was a really big, challenging experience for me to navigate. What am I doing in here? And I'm watching people just be, I had the word gaslit, or just like degrading people, or just making people feel bad for their thought processes. And I'm just like, what am I doing here? Um, so it brings me so much peace that when I'm taking care of my patients and they're giving me this feedback, I'm like, I am still making a small difference, but I know I can make a much bigger difference, especially in the birth world. Even though I'm an ICU nurse, and a lot of people will say, you don't work in OB, you don't do. Oh, okay, but
Calm down, Billie Jean.
so that's why I use my platform to try to get out there to get to as many people as I can talking about these kinds of things. I sprinkle it in here and there, but I talk a lot about birth and pregnancy and things, but I try to get those other topics that are really controversial out there to spark curiosity. And I feel like that's the way that I can do it while still working in the ICU. So I have two different lives, but I'm still trying to make a difference in each of those lives.
I would say that you're making a big difference, right? I was drawn to that very first video I saw of yours, and I knew instantly, I was like, wow, this is my kind of human. And I think that that experience that your patients share with you about, I'm really glad that you're my nurse and you hugging your patients, I don't think that is super common. I don't
I,
think a
I
lot of people are doing that.
I get a lot of looks sometimes, like I have people kissing me. The connection is so close, and I do have coworkers that are like, "Oh wow, that was so nice." I'm like, "This is just normal. This is like how you treat other people. These are humans." I don't say that, but in my mind, I'm like, "No, this is normal behavior. That these are people laying in bed that have lives." Like I had an experience where my patient had a brain tumor, and they said like the surgeon, this is like the most transitional point in my life. I have a tumor, and then this doctor is just another day in his life just pulling tumors out of brains. And I'm like, you're exactly right. Healthcare providers forget these are life-changing moments in people's lives. And I see it. I see it every day. And I'm like, I see you. I get you. I'm here.
So
And I think
what stops you from telling your coworkers that? What stops you from saying, no, this is normal. You should be doing this. We should all be doing this.
yeah, that's a really good question, because sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I feel like it's worth it sometimes.
No, I don't know because I'm not a nurse and I'm not on an ICU floor. Not worth it in terms of what? Are they going to think you're weird? Are they going to be like, oh my God, you're like, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard? Or you're going to get sick from our patients letting them kiss you? What are you afraid they're going to say? And
I
no
don't
judgment on my part because I don't know the difference.
No, I think, I don't know. It's maybe that's something that I could work on. Maybe I should stop. And I just feel like I don't want to change someone's mind at work because I'm so far removed from that. I just don't want to. This was a small example of me like hugging people, but it could be far deeper than that. Like I wouldn't mind, no, this is normal. I could say that. But I think it's something I could work on at work. I could change the environment in that way, speaking out about things like that. That's something that's definitely I could do
Yeah.
better at.
Yeah. And look, I know I'm well aware that's not possible for everybody. I know not all unit cultures are friendly to that kind of stuff. I know not all unit cultures facilitate open conversation or even the idea that things can change on the floor. I totally am. That's not missed. I hear ya. If you're out there listening, being like, I would never, I could never be me. I hear ya. I really do. And I don't know. I don't know how to fix that. I'm sending you hugs if that's the type of floor that you work on. I really do. Maybe see if you can change jobs to a better floor, and there may not be anything around you. And that's just the ugly truth right now of what it looks like within the American healthcare system. And I do think there's a lot of people out there like you. I don't think you're by yourself. I don't think
No,
you're alone. I think there are so many people who they may not be hugging their patients, but they want to. They feel that pull to do it. They feel that pull to bring a little bit more human. back to medicine because things have become so routine. Things
Mhm.
have become so systematic. Things have become so automatic, so robotic. Check off this to-do list and forget the niceties. And I think that if we really care about humans and we really want to turn this ship around, I think that we could start with a really free and easy to implement choice of just bringing a little bit more human back to medicine.
Yes, I totally agree. 100%.
So when we talk about things that are routine, and you talk about this a lot on your page, talk to us about the social constructs of rules and routines. You think, and I agree, but they're all made up, right? They're all socially constructed. Tell us what we need to know about that.
Yeah, so the rules and guidelines are there to protect the hospital. They are there to protect the providers. Me as a nurse, I have to follow protocols. And if I deviate that from that protocol and something happens, I'm in trouble. So those rules aren't there for individual patients. This is for everyone in the hospital. This is not individualized. And especially in maternity care, things need to be individualized. And this is where it comes, it is you as a mom to take authority in your own health and make decisions that maybe don't align with those guidelines. And I'm not saying don't listen to your doctor. Take that information in and say, thank you for that information. I'm going to go research more and see what feels like the best decision for me. And then that's when that intuition, you have to start to listen to that because it can get very challenging because you say, well, evidence is there. My doctor's telling me this, but I'm feeling like this doesn't make sense for me.
One of my favorite things that I have learned from my friend Alexandra over at Just the Inserts is she says, oh my God, I
Love her.
love her.
That
Yeah.
I'm
And she's just as cool in real life as she seems to be on the online. She's one of the people that I've met online where I'm like, wow, I really enjoy you both online and offline because you are the same human and that's so nice to know what to expect. But she says you can accept it, you can delay it, or you decline it. And that is your basic right. No one can take that power from you unless you give that to them. And I think that looks like a lot of different things, right? It depends on the scenario. So if you are trying to hang on to your power to birth up right, and you've got people around you that are saying, get on your back, the way that you keep your power is you simply don't get on your back. You can, if you'd like to say no, you can verbally decline. You can ask them to stop saying that. But the way that you actually keep your power is you just don't get on your back. You just don't get on your back. If you are trying to keep your power in terms of maybe vaccination choices for your baby, is you keep your power by finding a pediatrician that's aligned with you. You should not be going into battle every single time you go see your pediatrician. That's not keeping your power. That's battling for your power. Every single pediatrician appointment, you're going to be going to battle to make a decision that is literally your right. And so you keep your power in different ways in different scenarios. Can you step us through a couple of the quote unquote alternative choices that you made in your birth plan? And I make fun of the word alternative because you literally just chose something that is another choice but less common. It's not, and I guess for some people would be like, that's the literal definition of alternative. I make fun of it in terms of underneath your post, there's always people being like, this is crazy radical. And
it's
I
not.
literally just talking about something that is, not as common as standard practice, but is pretty common. Talk to us about what those decisions were, and then how did you walk that line of making those decisions?
I think we'll pick, I'll just, on that video, I'll just go through those things that I went through. So the really easy one for me was the eating and drinking. It was just clear out. The evidence is there. I'm eating and drinking. I have these items here that I brought. I don't care. I'm going to do what I want with that. So that was easy for me. The big one that everyone just is shocked by is that a nurse didn't give her baby hepatitis B shot. Shocking. I get that all the time. For me, two things. I don't have hepatitis B. That is one way that your baby's going to get it. The other way, my baby is not going to get it. my baby's not going to be injecting needles into their body or being touched with sexual fluids. It's just not happening. There's 100% guarantee that my baby will get aluminum in their vaccination and almost 0% that they're going to get hepatitis B. That risk outweighed the benefit. And so that was an easy decision for me. That was a no. The next one that's always controversial and always have questions about the eye goop. I say eye goop because people, what's the eye goop? It's the eye ointment they put on your baby after you have them to prevent gonorrhea and chlamydia. I do not have those STIs. I was checked in pregnancy. I do not have them. Me and my husband is the word celibate.
In a monogamous relationship. Committed to one another, if you will.
Celibate would be not having sex.
I think so.
Oh, I'm hilarious. Oh, we're in a monogamous relationship. Yes. So that does not apply to me. What was the other ones that I had on there? Oh, my biggest fear in my second pregnancy was postpartum hemorrhage. And fear was so intense. I would have visions of me bleeding out in my dreams, and I'm like, oh my God, this is something is calling to me. I need to figure out why I'm having this intense fear. And so then I went through my process of journaling. Where's this fear coming from? Where did I learn it from? Is this fear serving me? So I went through that whole process and I did a deep dive into how postpartum hemorrhage happens. And I'm an avid listener to Down to Birth. I learned a lot from them. I love them so much. They were like my go-to source of, I didn't care what anyone else said, the source of all things.
I love them.
When I had my second baby, this was before all of my like doula training and things like that. So I'm just a normal person like anyone else, just trying to navigate this. And so I learned everything there was to know about postpartum hemorrhage. And I knew that I did not want my placenta to be rushed, touched, pulled on, or any type of that matter. So I requested that there's no tugging. I had an alternative plan. So if I had a completely unmedicated labor, I wanted everything to be, I didn't want postpartum Pitocin. I didn't want anyone touching the placenta. I didn't want the third stage to be managed whatsoever. If I did have Pitocin, I would agree to have Pitocin through my IV because if I've had Pitocin, I'm at a greater risk for bleeding if I do not. I was very adamant about what I wanted with that third stage. I think those were the top things that I was really adamant about for my birth plan. Everything else was just
Now, talk to us about your decision for an IV. And maybe you don't want to talk about it on this platform. I know that it got hairy over on Instagram and people were not super kind. My community is typically very kind. I don't foresee you having any sort of backlash from this. And if you don't want to talk about it, we certainly do not have to. But just have a discussion on your decision-making process when it comes to IVs in labor.
Yes. So I decided that I did not want to have an IV in labor. Now, I didn't get that because I was 42 weeks and ended up getting induced, so I did have to get the IV. But in my original birth plan, I said that I did not want an IV unless medically necessary. That was a big one for me. And I was like, oh gosh, Kayla, you know all the bad things that can happen. And this is how medical providers think. The worst things that can possibly happen, you're going to know about it and you're going to think about it. So it was a lot of mindset work for me to overcome that. Kayla, no, this is natural. This is a natural process. There's nothing to fear here. So I know I can get an IV in an emergency. I know someone will get an IV in an emergency. And so I kept telling myself that either you're going to get it in my arm, you're going to get it in a bone, or you're going to get it through a big vein. Someone's going to get it. And so I kept telling myself that. And so I originally said no IV. And like I said, I ended up having to get one. But I posted a video about declining an IV in labor, and it got a lot of backlash.
They always do. The IV one is big.
You're killing women. You're contributing to mortality rates. What? How? A woman, if someone doesn't want something done to their body, they can decline that. And I shared a study. There's not very many studies at all, besides one that I found from Evidence Based Birth, where there was an IV group and a non IV group. And the outcomes were not any different. The hemoglobin levels or blood loss was not any different between the two groups. And so I shared that, and there's a lot of people that were very angry about that information I gave, and explaining, oh, an IV, it can't be worse than labor contractions. I screenshotted so many stories of women saying it was a worst part of their experience. And so if they don't want an IV and they didn't need it, then they shouldn't be made to feel or fear that they're making the wrong decision.
Amen to that.
Amen. That was a passionate one for me.
Amen to that. No, I think there's validity on both sides. As a nurse and a medical professional, I understand why you're so scared of postpartum hemorrhage. I get it, 1,000%. I've seen my fair share of hemorrhages. I am really lucky as a doula. I've never had the responsibility of caring for someone in that predicament because I'm not a medical professional, but I've witnessed it a million times, and I totally get the severity and I understand the emergent piece of it
And it's
1,000%.
so scary. And that's
Totally. And it can happen fast and it can happen, it's very unpredictable. So it can happen to people who have no risk factors. I 1,000% get that. But like you, I know how influential being forced to have an IV in your labor can be. I know how it can literally taint your entire birth experience. I have seen, I've witnessed, I have been at births where women are miserable with this thing in their hand and it disrupts their labor. And there is something to be said about all the disruption that happened from just forcing her to have an
right.
IV. Did that disrupt her labor pattern enough to stop her labor so that her baby got a little stuck and she ended up pushing for 4.5 hours and now she had a C-section? If we had just left her labor alone, could we have avoided all of that?
Exactly. Right. But they can't, I don't want to say they because I don't know for sure, but me personally, they're not thinking like that. They have a checklist. I have to get this IV in you. And it's taking me longer because you don't want it. And now that's the thought process. That's the old Kayla talking. That's how I'm thinking. Unfortunately, the system isn't made for individualized care.
Man, that sucks to hear. That's hard to hear. As a consumer of medicine, thinking we're going to go in and we're going to get the best care possible for me, and then really you just get this very cookie cutter. This is what it looks like for everybody. It's not individualized care. It's an algorithm on a computer and it spits out what the doctor's supposed to do and say and prescribe, and that's what you're given. I think that is just it's something that is not new to a lot of us. We know it. It's not new news, but it still stings every time you hear it.
It's a disservice to laboring women. Absolutely. And it's hard to have, it can be very hard to have the birth that you want in the hospital system. It's not impossible, of course. It's just there's a lot of obstacles that you have to jump through. You have to be prepared. You have to have a mindset. You really have to prepare.
Yeah. What did you do to prepare? How did you do that? How did you go into the hospitals that you were privy to the inside working? So you already knew, like, all right, this system is not set up for me. So what were you doing to offset that? I don't want to say combat that bias, but to balance out that bias because you were so aware.
I think the biggest thing for me in my second birth was I actually hired a doula. In my first, I did not. And so that was my biggest thing. I knew that if I had my doula and we had a relationship together and we created a plan that I would have my doula to help advocate for me. And that was the biggest thing is that I need you to be my voice. And so for me, that was literally the key for me. And of course, then I did a lot of reading and a lot of listening and I knew the rules. I know how the hospital system works. I know how nurses' minds work, doctors work. I know how all that worked. And so I had that on my side. But I think for just a person that's not a nurse, I think just having someone on your side can make all the difference.
Just knowing you have that cheerleader, knowing that no matter what, if every single other person in that room is betting against you or is suggesting something you don't want, you at least have one person in your corner that will say, you're free to make whatever choice feels good to you.
Yes,
You
because
should listen to your intuition.
yes, and because even as a nurse, when things were happening to me, I just turned into a normal person. My brain was
Mhm.
not it. You can get so caught up in fear. You need that person in your corner to remind you of your power. And if you are in the midst of active labor, you can't think and make decisions. And that's why I knew that I wanted to have my dual there to solidify those things. Because my husband, I love him, but he's just he's more of okay, whatever she says. No, I need someone to be from here.
Yeah. Look, men have their own experience. If this is your
Yes.
first baby, then they've never been in this situation before. And men are subject to the same freeze or fawn.
I,
Very rarely do they fight. You don't really usually have the option to flight either. So it's usually freeze or fawn where you are just like, they don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. And they do default to where a lot of us default to is just listen to the medical providers. And in some cases, that will be absolutely right, but not in all cases. And sometimes people go in knowing exactly what they do and don't want. And I think having someone there to help keep your voice and your desires at the center of the conversation and always being honored and consent always being gotten and autonomy always being respected is the key difference between walking away with birth trauma and not.
yes. I also forgot to mention a key point is that I meticulously picked out my provider, which was
Mm-hmm.
part of that
Mm-hmm.
process. And
Mm-hmm.
it's the most important decision that I made, as well as the hospital I chose. I was very meticulous with where I went.
Yeah. Yeah. So you change providers, you change doctors
I
and
did.
facilities. Yeah. Talk us through that.
So the old version of me was very medically minded. I went with the hospital that I worked for. I didn't choose a OB provider interview. I just got whoever I got. It felt like, I guess, like I was just another body. Like I had someone different every time. And I was like, this is not the experience I thought I was going to get. I don't feel loved, cared for. No one knows me. No one knows my dog's name. And I'm just like, is this how it's supposed to be? And so I knew I wanted a provider that knew me well, cared about me, I trusted, I could ask any question and not fear that she was going to get angry at me or make me feel stupid. So I had interview questions. I called hospitals. I listened to their voice. I asked questions and I was like, "Ooh, this person's very policy minded. This is not good right off the bat. We follow this evidence. Okay, that doesn't sound good." I was like, tell me about like your holistic practices with taking care. Holistic? What do you mean by holistic? I'm like, okay, nope, not that's not good. so,
Next.
so just started calling all these different providers, asking questions. And then I was like, oh, this one feels good. And so then I was like, I love my midwife. She knows me. She asks about my kids. And that is really important for the experience. Now she didn't help deliver my baby, but that whole experience was really important for the lead up to having my baby. And then for the hospital, I checked their birth outcomes. I I I didn't tour the facility, which I would recommend that you do that. But it was just fantastic. They have an alternative birthing suite, so it's more like a home-like environment. So those are huge aspects that you have to consider when you are considering a birth at a hospital.
Yeah. You mentioned the lead up to your birth, and we'll wrap up here. I do have a question about you following your intuition, but for anyone out there listening, you highlighted a good point, Kayla, that you can have the same provider for your whole entire pregnancy, but then they don't deliver your baby. And a lot of people think, okay, then what's the point? The point is for 9 months, you get to see this provider that is gassing you up, not gaslighting you, but gassing you up. They're jazzing you up. They are instilling confidence. They're saying you can do this. I believe in your body. Your body looks great. Your baby is flourishing. Look at your placenta, so healthy, so strong. the right size, not too small, not too big. Your baby is growing as we expect. Oops, this ultrasound checked in looks a little funky, but I'm not worried. Let's
Yep.
check in 2 weeks. I'm not worried, and you shouldn't be worried unless I'm worried. So do you have any questions? I'm happy to answer any questions, but I want to let you know I'm not worried. They're not instilling fear in you. They're not trying to scare you. They are not laying the foundations, dropping that breadcrumb, dropping those pebbles to something bigger that you know is going to culminate to be a 39-week induction that you don't want, or
Right.
being told that your baby is humongous at the end of pregnancy when you know that the likelihood of you having a big baby is really low. I think that being intentional with who means a lot, and it matters a lot when it comes to your mindset and the actual beliefs that you have about your body and your baby and your ability when you go into labor are set a lot by the provider that you see in pregnancy.
Absolutely. Yes. They can plant seeds and it can derail your whole mindset. Oh, there's something on the ultrasound that's concerning. Okay, now I'm going into a spiral. The confidence that your provider has is in your ability to birth your baby is so important.
And on the contrary of that, they could be planting seeds of confidence
Of course.
and belief in your body
Yeah.
and recognition of what's normal versus what's not, and reassuring you that your body and your baby are doing exactly as we expect them to do at this point in your pregnancy, and everything looks great. Your body
Yes.
is smart and intuitive. Your baby knows what to do. And if either one of those, your body or your baby, need help, they will give you signs. They will communicate that. Let's educate you on what that looks like. How do you recognize signs and symptoms that your body is needing help or that your baby is needing help? And then what do you do with that information?
Yep.
Okay, I want to wrap up with one last question that I just want to be very clear and direct and to the point. For someone out there who is struggling to find their voice, they have that intuition and they know that they want to choose something that may be looked at as alternative, but they are really struggling to reach out and just do it. They're struggling because they don't want to be judged. They're struggling because people around them, they're scared people are going to be mad. They don't really know how their friends and their family and their healthcare providers are going to react to them. What do you say to that, mama?
It's a really powerful question. It goes back to your intuition. You have to let all the noise go and just trust it. You have to sit there and think, oh, there's something in my body telling me that this is not right. And you have to just trust it. And you have to go with a decision that makes you feel calm and not fear-based. And that's the difference is fear is really loud and intuition makes you feel calm.
Mm.
And that's the difference. And that's what I tell people that are making hard decisions at the hospital or my friends or my clients. You have to listen to that.
I
And,
love that.
oh, yeah,
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is trust yourself. Trust that you know the right decision and hang on to that. Hang on to that in your mind, hang on to that in your heart, and hang on to the confidence that you can trust yourself to make the decisions for your body and your baby, no matter what that looks like, no matter what the situation is.
100%. Yes.
I love that. I could cry. Oh, Kayla, really, it has been such a blessing to have you on the show. I think this is a conversation that a lot of people probably shy away from. It can feel really woo. It can feel really funky to talk about your intuition or listening to your gut. And it can definitely feel really scary to think about saying no to your doctor or choosing something that might be thought of as rogue or alternative by other people in your life. These are big things attached to very real decisions, and I don't want to say consequences because that sounds so negative, but there's life after your decisions, and that's a very real thing. Impact, very real, and very real social consequences and consequences with your family and your friends and your coworkers even potentially. So I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing so openly and transparently and also compassionately. I think that you do a wonderful job job of bringing compassion to a conversation that a lot of people do bring defensiveness to, and bring the ideas and the energy that there is a right and a wrong, and that we are tasked with convincing these people to do something, and that's really just not it. Those people have lost the plot of the story, and I'm very glad to be able to share this space with you of not losing the plot and really fighting for our rights and fighting for informed consent and fighting for the people who come into the hospital system to really be treated with the care that they deserve. So thank you so much for being here. If our listeners wanted to connect with you, where can they do that, online and on social media?
Yeah, they can just follow me on Instagram at Kayla Elise Holistic. That's my small page that I'm trying to grow, a community of like-minded women. And that's mainly where you'll find me for now.
I love it. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for being here with Kayla and I. Thanks for hanging out with me every single week, and I'll see you in the next episode. Be sure to follow Kayla on social media, and you can find me at Tranquility by Hee and at the.birth.lounge. Until next time, head to your app store and download the Birth Lounge app for evidence-based childbirth education and data-driven postpartum support delivered straight to your phone. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I truly do value this community, and I love hanging out with you. You deserve to have a birth that you love with a provider that values your autonomy and respects informed consent. It's an honor to be your go-to gal when it comes to preparing for your baby. If you found today's episode helpful, share it with a friend. Share it with someone who could use evidence-based information to help them have an informed and confident birth. I'd love to hear what you have to say and read your sweet words. By leaving us a review, you are helping other expectant mamas and their families find the podcast so that we can reduce birth trauma and improve maternity care in the U.S. one birth at a time. If you're interested in joining the Birth Lounge, go to thebirthlounge.com. If you want to connect with me on socials, you can find me at Tranquility by Hee on all platforms. Until next time, stay educated, stay supported, stay confident. Bye.